2-1. All right, everybody. Welcome to day 20 of eTourism Summit 2020. I want to thank all of our attendees that have stuck with us through about 27 presentations so far, and now we're down to the second to last day. And I am really thrilled about this panel. 21 predictions for 2021. I'm sure if we would have done this back in March, Josh, we would have been wrong on about 98% of our predictions.
At least.
But I think we might have, after having 20 great days of talking to some of the best and brightest in the industry, a little bit more insight on what 2021 is going to look like. And I think obviously the fact that we're here coming in almost to November gives us a little bit better understanding. We've got an extraordinary panel, and I wanted to kind of quickly introduce everybody, and then we'll get on to some predictions. But you will notice that we have 5 ex-DMO execs, and that was by design. I thought that if we had a bunch of people that were as passionate about the destination marketing industry, but looking at it from different views, might be able to have a little bit more honest conversations than we would have when we were all sitting at our desk at DMO. So we've got Bill Geist of DMO Pros. Madison, Wisconsin, CVB was the last stop, and then you've been helping DMOs for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So great perspective, Bill. Welcome.
Thank you.
Matt Steiker, a former CMO at Travel at San Francisco Travel, and a CMO at CityPass, working with a ton of DMOs and a big agency background as well. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Will.
David Downing, a former journalist turned DMO pro at Visit St. Pete, where he led the marketing communications. And then the last 5 years, there was the president and CEO that I was fortunate enough to work alongside back in my days. And I started in the DMO space on the board of directors of the Clear Creek County Tourism Board back in, I think, like 1993 or something, and went on to be vice president of marketing at Denver CVB, worked with the Colorado Tourism Board and a bunch of other nations on the ad agency side, and then 10 years at Visit Florida. So I've kind of seen it from all sides. And then our sponsor today, and a great friend, and has been the host of many of these sessions, and was the host for something like 4 or 5 months of connecting marketing webinars earlier in the pandemic. Josh Collins, formerly of Franklin, Tennessee CVB, and a big music background, now is director of tourism for Street Sense. And we want to thank you, Josh, for your continued support of ETS, and thanks Street Sense as well for really stepping up this year. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a joy to be here, and always good to see familiar faces, new ones, and see those of you tuning in. We got 35 of you joining us, Ben and Aaron and Melissa. Wes, good to see you again. You know, it's great to see these names tuning in, because many of you, it's like, last time I saw you was at an in-person gathering. What is that? What does that feel like? That seems like forever ago. So, but yet still, seeing your name just brings memories of sharing drinks, wherever, at the lobby bar or whatnot, wherever we were, and it's a gift. So glad to be back here. And Bill and David and Matt, good to see you guys as well this morning.
You too, Josh.
So, Will, we're
Awesome.
about to drop some lights, right?
Yeah. So the theme of the Tourism Summit has long and always been see tomorrow, right? And that's kind of where we're going. I'm going to start off with a quote that I stole from Nate Huff at Miles Partnership. And it was, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less, by General Eric Sheminsky. And I think that is my best piece of advice for anybody in the destination marketing space going into 2021. So with that, Josh, do you have a kickoff prediction for 2021?
Oh man, I love that quote, by the way. That's really fantastic. I'll follow suit. Maybe we'll set the table this way. No pressure on David or Bill or Matt coming next here as I toss to you guys. But I'll say one of the most powerful quotes that I think it really is going to set the table for much of our engagement. Moving into 21 is Maya Angelou that, people will forget what you did, right? I see some nodding, Matt, I'm talking, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel, right? And to me, that gets at the key and the heart behind what experience design is all about. And I think that is going to become a pretty massive opportunity for destination marketers on behalf of what they want to do within destination development, destination management, certainly even destination stewardship. But thinking about experience design, right? From interest all the way down to advocacy, right? What does that look like? How are they walking away? How are our guests walking away? What are they remembering? And what, in fact, they will remember most is how we made them feel. So I think that is the experience design element. I'm really passionate about that, thinking about that. How do you steward the gap but that is created by all of us unintentionally between expectation and experience, right? Those looking at our destinations have certain expectations. They want to be treated in a certain way. They want to see this, that, or whatever. And then that gap is created because what they experience, most of the time, we're all human because we make mistakes, fall short of those expectations. And experience design is all about peering into that gap, listening very well, and designing opportunities, converting them into wow moments, the word of mouth moments, right? All of that kind of stuff that really activates our audience. So that's my prediction for 2021. And let's see, David, I'm gonna toss to you.
You know what? That was a good one, and that was a good toss because I just wrote it down when you said it. I'm going to make the T-shirt for you. You know how in London on the tube it says "Mind the Gap"? I'm going to say "Steward the Gap," right?
Boom.
And what you said, interesting enough, Josh, and we haven't rehearsed this for all the people who joined in here. It does dovetail very directly with one of mine, and mine isn't necessarily prediction as much as it is a hope for the industry, a hope for everybody in the DM space, and it's this. And it's not directed at anybody, and I'm going to stress the point to prove the point, but boy, have you ever had anybody give so many conditions before saying something?
Just my wife.
This. We really have to, as an industry, we have to get out of the mindset that we are in the good news business. Look, this year has been anything but good news. And if that's the case, then what business are we in right now, right? I get the instinct on it, but I think, and this was even before COVID, that phrase has never sat well with me. I think it really cheapens what we do as marketers, as crisis communicators, as budgeters, as directors, as destination managers, all these other things. To reduce it to saying we're in the good news business is like saying, a fireman is getting the kitty out of the tree business, right? It's nice and it's cute that they do that occasionally, but that's not what they're there to do. It's one forward-facing thing, and I think it does kind of spearhead to a lot of other things. I think as an industry, and look, I'm throwing all of us in that same pot as industry. Just because I'm not working directly for a DMO anymore doesn't make that difference. But I think we need to re-examine how and how much we tout our successes, because that sets up expectations both from our managers or our shareholders or stakeholders, and in previously it would also bring some resentment from a wide variety of people who don't want tourism. Over tourism. Remember that hashtag when it existed? I don't think it's been used lately, but I think we really have to have the ability, in the larger DMO space, and this is inside and outside, but I don't think I've ever seen such a group of multifaceted, talented, dedicated, and inventive people. There's some amazing people in this space. And when you consider on any given moment the number of responsibilities on any DMO, it is so much more than telling people good news. So my hope is that moving forward, we can find a place, it's something like a bad realtor would say, I'm in the good news business. Oh, good news, we have an offer on your house. Well, the bad news, it's $150K under asking price, but so that's really not good news, that's bad news. So my wish and my hope, and hopefully it's a prediction, is that we can grow the brand of what it means to be in the DMO space to really claim all of the levers that we have to pull every day.
Awesome.
That's good. That's good.
Steward
Bill,
the-
coming to you. Steward the Gap. I like that. I'm a large. I'll send you my address afterward. Yes, done deal. Bill, what about you, my friend? You there?
Uh-oh.
We lose you?
Bill froze. We got.
Oh, Bill froze. Matt, tossing
Yeah.
you.
Sure. So I'll pick up on the quote. One of my all-time favorite quotes from literally being 8 years old, walking into the drugstore and seeing the posters on the rack in the back, was a quote by Helen Keller, which is "Life is a daring adventure or nothing." And that whole idea to me plays into exactly what you guys are just talking about. That, David, to your point, we have so many bright, innovative, creative minds in the DMO world. And yet what we see mostly in the marketing side is pretty darn safe. You know, it is pretty darn risk averse. And so while having sat in the chair, I understand that desire. And certainly I understand the pressures from the stakeholders to drive things towards the middle and do what other people have done, et cetera. My prediction, and again, David, maybe to your point, maybe it's more of a hope than a prediction. But my prediction certainly is that we are recognizing that finally, and you know, thanks to COVID, the travel industry is getting the kind of respect that it has deserved for so long, that people are realizing in the retail space, in the restaurant space, and even in the attraction space, that they can't just simply rely on residents, and that in fact, it is tourists that keep destination economies alive. And so doing the same thing, saying the same thing about your mountains or your beaches or your forests or your food or whatever it is, saying the same thing as everybody else gets you absolutely nowhere. In particular, coming out of COVID, you need to be bold. You need to not be risk averse. And so that's my prediction for 2021 for DMOs.
I love it. Bill, I think you're back. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
My prediction for 21, at least my first one, is, it may sound negative, but I think with every negative, there's an opportunity. And I think the drumbeat that we're going to hear coming through 2021 from community leaders is going to be the thought of merging destination marketing organizations with chambers of commerce, with economic development. And that's a knee-jerk reaction, and I get it. They'll say things like maximizing resource and eliminating duplication of admin. But here's the thing: we need, I think, as destination marketing organizations, to take that opportunity and maybe get in front of that conversation and say, folding DMOs into economic development or chamber of commerce misses the mark. The recovery comes from destination marketing. The recovery comes from marketing. The recovery comes from new revenues coming into our communities. And that only happens with a strong marketing message. And so really the organizational structure, what we really have the opportunity to do is form an alliance in which marketing is the key message, not chamber, not economic development, because they talk to very, very thin verticals in our communities and in our world. DMOs talk to everybody. And so I think what we need to do is be ready for these conversations, because it's going to start happening. I mean, we're already starting to see some communities, mostly small ones, but if the small start, it's going to get bigger and bigger as it goes. And we're starting to see that conversation burble up in the country.
And DMOs are so much better equipped to deal with the multi-pronged issues and to really gather the industry and to build connections. There's no question.
And we have been.
That's right.
For the past 8 months, what other agency in our communities has been as nimble as a destination marketing organization to take care of independent business? No.
Well, and it's funny we say that. Wes is on from Visit Stockton, and they, nobody in their community could figure out how to help with CARES Act funding. They raised their hands, stepped up, and accomplished it. So I think DMOs, to your point, have a great opportunity ahead of them. One other prediction for you, Josh, and I think it goes back to what Matt was talking about early. The first presentation or the second presentation we had at ETS, we had Adam Sachs on, and basically to bundle all that down, they're saying 21 is going to end up with travel volume about 60% of where we were in 19. 22 about 80%, 23 maybe 90%, 24 it comes full back. So we're going to see much more competition. And to Matt's point, I think how we create and differentiate is going to be critical for tourism marketers moving forward. I've long been a critic, back 20 years of tourism marketing is art, culture, shopping, dining, fun for the whole family. And differentiation is going to be one of the most important tools, I think, that every destination and tourism entity is going to have to face.
Yep, agreed.
So
I want to jump on something there real quick, John. And
Yep.
Joe, I agree with what you're saying, and I think part of it does dovetail with what I was saying. So for so many years, the DMO industry was on this, this crack that we're in the good news business, right?
Yep.
And when it came time to really show our mettle, they thought, oh, you're only in the good news business, and this isn't good news. So what help are you going to be at this point? But I completely agree to really focus on the key of marketing, getting that message down and getting the differentiation baked into it. It'll set us up nicely for what's to come.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, can I jump in on one thing too?
yes.
Bill, kind of picking up on what you just said, it's really interesting to hear that some of the smaller DMOs are already starting to think about or talk about mergers with the chambers and other local organizations. I've been having a lot of conversations recently with Warren Wilkerson. I think some of you guys know Warren. He's another X-Man, was at Choose Chicago for a bunch of years and has bounced his way around the industry a little bit, and one of those people that just has a wealth of knowledge. And one of the things that he and I have been talking about is just this notion that a DMO can be, or at least has the potential to be, sort of at the center of all of these marketing conversations, right? And so when you look at attracting businesses, when you look at attracting films, when you look at attracting sports events, et cetera, other big events, even universities, students, even hospitals and their doctors, et cetera, they all have one thing in common, right? Which is, how are you marketing the destination? And yet very few DMOs have taken upon themselves to sort of lead beyond the visitors, right? And so the whole idea of them being the epicenter for what the brand is all about, and then being able to communicate that out. It's something Warren and I have been talking a lot about. I know his agency is working on, but I think it's really essential for DMOs to be in that space, leading and driving that brand conversation.
So
Yeah, and as Morgan said 10 years ago, it all starts with the visit.
Yeah.
And the visit starts with us.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I love this. This is so great. I want to try to. I think we've at least had 8 predictions now. I think we can probably distill 8. I know we got Becca in the background, helping us out here, writing these down. This will be a great follow up, and. Again, this is all in fun. None of us here are prophets, nor do we want to be in that business, because most of them ended up dead. So that's not what we want here. But in all fun, I do love this unrehearsed moment here, because I think we're building and continuing to building. The next prediction I will add totally predict, or it just adds on to. I'm talking about building better networks. And what I think about that, building better networks is both online and offline. There are all kinds of tools that we are being given within technology to create better and more efficient owned channels of distribution, whether that's on the brand side, from a marketing messaging side. I'll just drop a little nugget here. I really am shocked at still the degree to which Facebook is underutilized by most DMOs. Facebook is a dramatically powerful tool to allow us to create networks, distribution networks across our destinations. And that is a very underdeveloped idea. I'm still a little bit, this has been years now in the making. But I think, and I will predict that the shift we've had to do to activate more of our locals is going to open up more conversations around, okay, now what's next? And then the what next, it's like, how do we keep them engaged? How do we keep leveraging them? And you guys, as you're talking about the DMO being at the center of the table, which I completely agree with. The DMO is the conductor of this lifeblood, because, to your point, what are we selling, right? Okay, well, every place has shopping, every place has dining, you know what I mean? That's not what we're selling, right? Not at all to that point. So, but as we really focus on what we are selling, this experience, these transformational experiences within our destination, even, right? Turning those that love where they live into our best advocates in the marketplace in response to that competition you're talking about, Will, in response to this shift of, oh, well, we can't just pat ourselves on the back anymore saying how good we've done. No, like we are actually needing to recover. We have small businesses, we have families needing to continue to put food on the table. Like we've got to all we're in this together. That messaging, right? That's going to evolve. And we're going to have to create better networks, both online and offline, if we're going to continue to pick up and gain share back.
Josh,
All right.
Josh, if I could just jump in with a segue.
Yeah.
My next prediction for 21 is one that I don't know if you guys were watching the World City
Yes.
sessions last weekend, but the mayor of Toronto completely blew me away when he said that rather than just throw money at the situation, he goes, what they did was they identified what does small business need. And 30% of the small businesses in Toronto did not have an online presence. So the city set it up. They set up websites for this 30% that were,
Brilliant.
I think that's our role. I mean, we came to the aid and to the savior of our independent businesses in the first 2 months, right? We got those protocols in place. For 21, I think we need to take it to the next step, and we need to figure out ways to take care of the online opportunity for our members, our partners, our stakeholders to sell online. Because, as Will said, this isn't coming back soon, at least not soon enough for any of us. And I saw a post the other day from Hell's Kitchen in Minneapolis, a great restaurant bar, and many of us were there when DI was in Minneapolis, but they're at 4% of what they did in September of last year. 4%. And so even the successful restaurants and businesses are hurting. How do we as DMOs take it to the next level?
Just shameless plug, because I completely agree with that. And so much of the work we've been doing throughout COVID has been exactly that too, Bill. I mean, Montgomery County, Fairfax, all over the DMV area, we're same thing, looking at that need and trying our best, to come alongside these destinations and helping them with that exact initiative. So I couldn't agree more. David, you look like you're about to jump in there.
Yeah, Josh, what was the Facebook plug? Are you taking something from Zuckerberg here? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I know, right? I should teach a class on that somewhere, but I just wanted to drop that in because that came up recently, and I was like, I'm really surprised at. I mean, we all know Facebook is a powerful tool, and it's more expensive right now because of the political climate we're in. It's pay to play, yada yada, all this kind of stuff. But they have built a way for us to connect our community together. We're just not really tapping into it very much, and I think that's evidence of us seeing that a lot of DMOs are going, I don't know if I'm talking to the right people. I don't know if who I'm marketing is the right people, on and on and on and on. Yeah.
I was only half joking because I did watch Zuckerberg on his testimony the other day. And that's kind of the point that he made. But for us, these small businesses wouldn't be able to market to. And that's a long conversation that I'm not going to touch. But I am going to throw one more grenade on this fire as if it needs it. And it goes back to something, Bill, I think you said, is that, how we're going to be arbiters of our destination. And until you said, or maybe it was Matt, it was one of you guys over on the right here. And until you said it, I hadn't thought of this before, but isn't it interesting that our boards have the word tourist or tourism in them, and the DMOs have the word destination in them. And I think there's oftentimes an inherent just at loggerheads there. It's larded with hoteliers. The hotel in most states is the pass-through point for the tax. It's not the tax being paid by the hotels, it's paid by the visitor. I've had the discussion with many hoteliers, but I think that's part of what needs addressing here. The constituency of the boards that the DMOs work with and answer to, and to telegraph that larger vision of what a DMO should be to the people who really do hold the purse strings and the power. So I'm gonna have to wear a bulletproof vest out in public from now.
Right.
I did say that.
Matt, jump in.
I was just going to pick up on something that Bill said, but then I got lost in what David said, so I'm completely gone. But I'll throw in kind of a funny one, just a random one, because I know we have a couple of minutes to spare here. I don't know. Are you guys all aware of the phenomenon that's happening on YouTube, which is first time hearing? Have you guys seen this? So
Yeah.
First time hearing is two young Black kids, twin brothers, who experience different forms of music for the first time. And it's fascinating to watch. And they literally just set up a camera on themselves as they listen to just random, mostly historic stuff. The one that caught my eye was Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. And they're like completely enthusiastic about it, not having ever heard it before. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's really cool. So prediction for next year, and this maybe goes back to some of the, how are you getting out of the mode of doing what you're doing? Somebody is going to hire these guys. This is the two brothers. Some destination is going to hire these two guys, and it's going to be first time visiting rather than first time hearing. Like they're going to bring these two kids to their kids. They're in their early 20s probably. They're going to bring these two kids to their destination. These kids are just like energetic, enthusiastic. They have an audience that, by the way, none of us speak to. And that's going to open up brand new doors for destinations across the country.
I hope it's a historic destination, somebody with a really fantastic heritage product, right?
Absolutely.
Because that sector, how many times have we sat on webinars or strategy meetings like, okay, we got this amazing heritage part. How do we connect with the next generation?
Yeah, exactly, Josh. Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. All right. I think, Will, you're next.
Oh, I'm next. Let's see. Influencers, I'll say. So what about, I think we're going to have to move a lot faster. I think destination marketing, and this is something that the speed to market is going to win. And we saw this on TikTok, right? When Dogface comes out with his skateboarding video, and we're on a session on social media, and we show what Gathan did and Visit Lex with the horse, cruising along. And the first comment was Justin in Denver saying, "Damn it, Justin! Damn it, Gathan, you beat me to it." And it's going to be something like that. To Matt's point, it's being fast, being willing to take a risk, and doing something cool. And that kind of goes back to our earlier conversations of being scared, right? Of being scared to make a mistake. I had a great quote the other day that I saw. It said, people that are averse to taking real risk are going to make 2 big mistakes a year. People that are willing to take risks are going to make 2 big mistakes a year, right? I mean, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to do something, and you're going to learn a lot of lessons. But it's going to be speed to market, and I think that's going to differentiate the winners and the losers. Because next year, if you're only down 35%, you're gaining market share, right? And if you're down anymore, you're losing market share. And we're going to see, we've had 10 years of great, everybody's had a win, but markets are going to shift. It's going to be hyper competitive, and the people first to market and quick to act are going to be successful.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna jump in and keep us going here. I've written down several of these of what I've been thinking about, and maybe I'll write this up and put it on LinkedIn or something. Who knows? But I'm obsessed right now with the idea that we really have as an industry, and I love that we're all on this side, so we can speak with some degree of openness here. David, certainly I don't want to have to wear a bulletproof vest. I'm just saying. So, but no, I'm just kidding. But really create better feedback loops. Okay, I think when we think about Will, picking up on what you've said, how do we really pick up share? What does that mean? What is that going to look like? How are we evaluating it? Consumers are now telling us more often and more frequently than ever before. We really seem to struggle to listen. And so I think that by creating better feedback loops, we can then, I guess I'm repeating myself, but then we can design interactions, right, in a way in which respond to them, which of course builds trust, shows empathy, and is timely. So that speed to market is just so key. For example, this is a great, like if you're doing a SWOT analysis of your own marketing. Okay, here's a good one. If you've got somebody in your database and they visit your website, do they get an email? Does that trigger an email? They're telling you they're interested. Are you following up with them? Right? Think about that in terms of retail. We see it in retail all the time. Right? We see in other industry categories all the time. On behalf of the destination, are we being responsive to that intelligence? Are we creating a feedback loop around that? That's a very tactical thing, but it's also a prediction, I think, in going, if we are going to recover quicker, if we are going to gain share back, we're going to have to think through this kind of stuff and be a far more agile and elevated in our tactics.
Yep.
All right, who's next?
To that point, Josh, yesterday's session, we had a session with Grant on machine learning. And it's not just what we think or what we want to be portraying, what the messages that we want to go out. And we have the ability now to utilize machine learning at very simple, free access to what people are saying about our destination and our partners on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and talking back to them in the languages that they're using, not the languages we want to use. And I think that'll be a big part of creating those kind of feedback.
100%. David, go for it.
I've got a prediction. I predict we're going to have a guest here in just about a minute or minute and a half. That's the only one that's going to come true, right? At least from this perspective.
I love it. It's suspense. I'm waiting. I'm hanging on. I'm hanging on with bated breath here.
Yeah, doing my best. And Cher said there's a question on the.
The Phil Collins one is amazing. Yes, agree completely. What a
no in the Q&A, Josh. So it's from Wendy. It's from Wendy Keel.
Wendy,
so what I'm hearing is that DMO should move beyond the tourism role to be in leisure and hospitality, which includes restaurants, museums, attractions, etc. No matter who patronizes them, be it local or tourists, right? Due to that, would require new sources of funding and new metrics, right? Oh, Wendy, you have opened up a door. I love it. Maybe, I don't know if this should be the first question for our special guest who's arriving in just a minute, or if we should wait till afterwards, because I definitely think that picks up on some of the trends and predictions and stuff that we've already started to say. David, you were hinting at this pretty darn close just a minute ago.
Yep. Yeah, this is such a good one. Wendy, thanks for asking that. Seriously. How vulnerable and how honest do we want to be, gentlemen? That's the question. So I do think it would be a good question to pose to our guest. David, we got a countdown happening here or what?
Momentarily, I don't put times with my prediction.
Sometime in 2022.
But that question has been floating around in the tourism world for years. It's once you get that amount of money piled somewhere, and what function is that going to serve, and how's it going to serve the many, many stakeholders who deserve to be somehow addressed by that? Again, I think it goes back to the larger question of the TDC and making the conversation bigger by making those people who are in the conversation bigger.
100%.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it would be easy. Oh, here we go. Well, David, you've cloned yourself.
Hey!
I love it. Welcome.
How you doing, everybody?
Doing great, Roger. How about you?
So you tell me this webinar only attracted 4 people?
What you can do, Roger?
Wow.
Yes.
We're talking to ourselves, Roger. That's all we're doing.
That's as far as I'm going to go. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Roger Dow, President and CEO of U.S. Travel Association, he's very kindly agreed to jump on and join us and make an incredibly prescient prediction that's going to come true, and he's going to be held to it. So how about that, Roger, for a setup?
Just about the Tampa Bay Rays next year.
Yes. There we go. Yeah.
First thing, I would not pull a winning pitcher out of the game, but that doesn't. Okay.
Touche.
Right. Yes. Touche.
Right. All right. Here's my prediction. Everything is being driven towards touchless. Biometric is going to become the new normal. Your face will become you. You're going to get to a point, we're going to walk through TSA with our face, and we're going to walk down past a group of cameras that are just to keep people going. And occasionally someone will say, sir, ma'am, step aside, as they do normally, but you're not going through all that stuff in your face. You board the plane because it's still you. Getting on the plane, you won't need your boarding pass. You check in your hotel because it's still you. And your payment system will be tied to your face. You'll actually check into your room. You'll go to your room, look at your door, and your door will unlock. When it comes to meetings, your registration and everything tied to events is going to be your face. Now we're going to layer in COVID. If I layer in COVID, now we're going to have an enter or do not enter all tied, just like we're used to TSA asking you, hey, would you step aside for a minute for a step check or whatever? And going to a meeting or an event, you're already going to pre-fill your questionnaire. If I haven't seen anyone with COVID, I don't have a fever, et cetera. You're going to have, perhaps you might have been taking the vaccine, so that's going to be in your record. You might have antibodies, that might be in your record. You might have a prophylactic pill that you're taking that keeps you from getting COVID, or even something I'm looking at, there's a thing called a bio button that reads all your temperature, your heart rate, your cough, your respiratory 1,400 times a day and predicts COVID well before you have it. So you put all those things together, you now walk into the meeting and everyone who's paid their registration recognizes their face, it automatically takes their temperature, they walk in the meeting and they're clear. Those that aren't might be pulled aside for some extra questioning or nurse triage. So my whole thing is your face will become you and every aspect of what we do in travel and meetings.
Love it.
Bold.
I love that. It's very bold. I love it. It gets me thinking. We certainly see that technology being used already today. So I love it. I mean, you're talking about just a vertical integration of that all across the, consumer experience, which is fantastic to see. I'm sure that's going to be very interesting debates on the other side, on the privacy side and whatnot, so that's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Well said. Well said.
Love it. And from the privacy side, all that information you will own. So it doesn't regard all of it, but you're going forward with your face, and your face will say, need to talk to Josh. And, it doesn't say why I need to talk to Josh, but the bottom line is, Josh, can we talk about, ask you a couple questions here because you've been randomly selected or whatever. Or Josh may say, hey, look, here's my records. Take a look at them. I'll talk to the nurse. I'll tell her what she wants. I want to get in that meeting, but let's have at it.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. So right before you jumped on, Roger, we had a great question. We'd love to get you to kick off, this round robin. We'll take a pass at answering. Wendy Keel says, so what I'm hearing is that DMOs should move beyond the tourism is in quotes role to be in leisure and hospitality, which includes restaurants, museums, attractions, etc. No matter who patronizes them, be it local or tourists, right? Does that, or would that require new sources of funding and new metrics? How say you?
I say yes. I think we think too narrowly when we think of a DMO because we call destination marketing organizations. We really have talked about moving towards destination management organizations. So what are all the things that attract someone to a destination? So why isn't the DMO involved in the 15 world-class golf courses at Myrtle Beach? Why isn't the DMO involved, with the museums? Friends of mine tell me that when the Picasso exhibit comes to Chicago, you can't get a hotel room in Chicago, but no one thinks of the museum as, a key partner, both in a funding and an engagement way with the DMO. Sometimes it's just something people like to do. So I definitely think DMOs need to expand beyond the traditional leisure and group business to really all aspects of a destination that affect anyone who doesn't live there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned too narrow, the thinking of it too narrowly. Bill, I'd love to get you to jump in there because you've written so much about this and you clearly have some really well thought out opinions. On the funding side of it, though, what are you already beginning to see how the funding is shifting and growing? We talked about, agencies coming together and DMO being at the center of that table, but speak to the funding side of that, if you would.
Hey, before Bill answers, I'm going to sign off. I was on a board Zoom call, but since I like you guys so much, I said they got to wait, so I got to go back to the board meeting.
Roger, thanks. Good
Roger.
to see you.
Okay.
Yes, thanks for tuning in.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Thanks, Roger. Well, and let me piggyback on something Roger said first before we get to funding. There was about 10 years ago, as we were coming out of the last recession, I bumped into a guy named Ed Morrison. He's now at Northern Alabama University. And he made this really interesting point. He says there's good money, bad money, and neutral money. He says good money is the money that comes into our communities from other places. It's now our money, so it's good. Bad money is when we go to Vegas or Chicago or wherever, someplace else. And now that money is gone. It's not our money anymore. It's bad money. And neutral money is the money we spend within our ecosystem. And he said the DMO of the future, this was 10 years ago, he said the DMO of the future is going to be about increasing good money, decreasing bad money, and speeding the velocity of neutral money. And I went up to him after his speech and I said, you know, DMOs do the first one. We're about good money. And I said, but we don't do bad and neutral. He said, I know. He goes, who does? And I went, wow, good point. And shouldn't DMOs be in the business of creating enough reasons why you wouldn't want to go somewhere else this weekend, so you keep the bad money from leaving? And why wouldn't we? And we are at this point, because now we're going hyper local. But 10 years ago we didn't. But now we are getting people from from the rural to come into the urban to go to rural, town to town, within our destinations, and that's really, really cool. So I wanted to give a shout to Ed in that concept, because I think it broadens our minds of maybe where the opportunity lies in the future. To the funding thing, you're right. And there's probably no more money coming from public sector, although there should be. I've always been a proponent of saying, look, if it's important for the community, why aren't we using general fund money? Why does it only have to be room tax? That just doesn't make any sense. If we can prove and we know that it's good for everyone, why shouldn't there be? Because honestly, most economic development units are funded by general fund. Well, that's us. We're the first state for economic development. So why don't we have an opportunity for that? And I just don't think that that's a possibility given the current political climate and the fiscal climate. So that gets us to corporate. And so, and I know people are getting tired of hearing the Tulsa model, but the Tulsa model makes some sense. And that is that the major corporations in Tulsa had a pain point, and that was they couldn't attract top talent because there's this image that Tulsa is
right.
When in fact Tulsa is one of my favorite towns. I mean, it's uber cultural, great music, amazing downtown. But if you've never been there, you wouldn't know that. So the corporate leaders in Tulsa, 60 of them, get together and write checks to visit Tulsa every year for the past 8 or 9 years to make Tulsa look cool. And I think that's an extension because, so many of us are focused on room nights. But, to everybody's point, if we're focused on promoting the destination to everybody for every reason, we're the marketers, we're the experts. Why wouldn't everybody that needs a marketing issue invest in what we do and say, we need an image campaign. Can you guys handle that? And we're seeing it. South Shore, Indiana, actually headed up it wasn't a visitor campaign. It was a appeal to new residents. They were trying to get people from Illinois to move to Indiana. And it was the DMO that economic development came to and said, look, you're the marketing gurus. You do this for us and we'll pay you.
I love it. So we got about just over 15 minutes left. I think we're my count's probably off, but I think we may be around 15, 16 predictions at this point. So let's keep it rolling. Matt, what else you got?
Let's see. So sustainable travel has been kind of an interesting one, and I've been trying to bang a drum about over tourism for the last several years with some of the DMOs that I've been consulting with. And it's fascinating because from a metric standpoint, going back to what to the question that was asked just a minute ago, from a metric standpoint, DMOs consistently are looking for year-over-year increases in numbers of visitors. Well, that just sets up a destination ultimately for being being tapped out and having its resources exhausted. So my prediction for next year, and in part, again, thanks to COVID, it seems odd to say, but thanks to COVID, is that we may be traveling a little bit more, quote unquote, sustainably next year. We may be looking at some of the either off the beaten path places more than we otherwise would, or even some of those places that have frequently sort of exceeded their numbers. those places may be more reasonable and realistic to get into safely than they have been in the past. And frankly, I think that's only good for the consumer, for the experience. I think it's good for everybody who is involved.
I love that you mentioned that, because the data certainly backs it up too. If you look at Gen Z and what they are requesting, what the demands that Gen Z is putting in the market right now, if you're not sustainable, if you don't have a purpose-driven approach like that, right, then you're going to be ignored. They're going to move on.
Yeah, exactly right, Judge.
David, what you got?
You know, I was watching a newscast the other night, and it was focusing on COVID in Italy again, and it was specifically on Rome. And by their own estimate, 1/3 of the apartments in Rome are empty. And they're empty because they're Airbnb.
Wow.
All the locals in Rome have been displaced. So this just doubles down on their economic issue right now in a city center like that. You take even a place like here in St. Pete, you know, all of the garage apartments and cute little places in these historic districts where the servers in the industry, and a lot of them in the hospitality industry, folks used to rent, they've all gone Airbnb too, and they all become too expensive, and they've moved out. So there's this displacement going on that at times of stress like this, stress of the product, it shows cracks in the foundation that we didn't know were there. Switzerland is famous for having a national referendum on everything they do. And when I was there once several years ago, they were having a national referendum on what percentage of homes, because all these little Swiss Alpine villages, what percentage of the homes would they allow to be seasonal or vacation homes? Because it destroys a community. People there, and what they agreed upon was 20%, and it passed with 68% of the vote there. But I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think the inversion of, the hotel versus the Airbnb kind of fighting each other. People are right now in the COVID place looking at Airbnb like it's somehow more attractive because they can control their environment and not interact with other people. The Airbnb versus the Uber versus rental car, like we were talking about, Josh, that's flipped on the other side. People are renting cars more because they want their own little COVID bubble to drive around and not be exposed to. So I think when we have this time to really look, it's like when the tide is out at a huge tide and you can see all the things on the ocean floor that you didn't see before. I think we're seeing a lot of different things on the ocean floor of our business while the tide is.
What a great mental picture. I love that. That is exactly right. I've been saying, as we've been doing these all summer long, because we've experienced the longest record of growth, right? Of quote unquote good, right? I'm gonna use quotes around that good, because it really takes an extremely self-aware leader to stare at the quote unquote good and go, okay, I know that there's actually stuff at the bottom here we're not paying attention to. And if we're going to keep going in this good direction, that's what we've actually got to pay attention and work on. So I love that, David. That is such a great mental picture. I love that. I'm going to hang on to that. Will, what do you got next?
I think the goal for destination marketing moving forward is data. I think data is something that destination marketers have not necessarily been that good at. Manage some email lists, maybe manage some social networks, and try to grow our likes. But I think really understanding the data behind our customers, potential customers, I think our community sentiment is going to be key. And it's not. I think it's a skill set that is going to have to be learned. On the destination marketing side, we've got some great partners here at ETS that have really gone deep into this with Entrada. We had Arrivalist, so we've started to get some partners in the community that are helping start us down those paths. But my bet is that to be successful in this new world, when we have a totally changed customer, understanding them and looking at the data to guide our decisions, not our gut instincts or kind of what we want to think feels good.
So I'm gonna keep it rolling here and jump in, Matt. I'll toss to you next. I saw you want because you kind of stole one of mine. I had on here learning to measure what matters. I just think is super critical. Since you kind of took that one, I'm going to move to another one which you did touch on, but it's education. We've got a massive education gap inside of our industry. To your point, it's learning new skills. We really have been stuck in this period of goodness, which is great, but it's kind of lulled us into a little bit of, hey, okay, this is good enough. Or, I saw somebody do that. Oh, that's great. Okay, how do we transfer that? And what's our version of that? You know what I mean, right? We've just a bit of complacency, if you will, on the skill set even, right? And so if you think about these questions, why would we not look more at what logistics has taught us about experience design and go, you mean I can order something and it'll be at my door in an hour? Wow. Why would we not look at retail or cars or manufacturing or any other industry and think about life cycle, sales funnel, and go, how can we adopt that? Right. So, I mean, there's an education gap I think we're going to need to fill as we move forward in 21 and beyond. Matt, go.
So I love that you just add that. And Will, you may remember this, but a couple of years ago, I wrote an article about that thing, about how DMOs are just way too insular and way too incestuous, and we only look at our own industry. And I offered up some suggestions. In fact, Will, at the time, I think I didn't reference you and Visit Florida, but instead I referenced what Patrick Harrison at Visit Tampa Bay is doing with the English Football Club. And that's just a really interesting, brilliant idea where they're looking beyond our industry and they're looking at what companies like Nokia or what companies like Pepsi are doing and sort of the value of doing stuff like that. And that whole article was kind of about exactly what you just said, Josh, that being willing to look outside our industry and be somewhat objective about how our consumers, how our guests, how our visitors engaging with brands today, not just destination brands, but how are they engaging with brands today? And it's sort of a fascinating question. The thing that I wanted to touch on the data thing, you reminded me, Will, of what I was going to comment on, what Bill said earlier when we were talking about Facebook, because obviously it is certainly it's a social network, but it is a repository of just vast scores of data, as we all know, right? And Bill, the point that you made that I thought was so interesting was that idea that it takes a visit first, right? Like it takes coming to the destination before anything else happens, right? As I try to counsel and advise DMOs who may be less sophisticated than some others, one of the things that's really interesting is creating parallels between sort of the offline world and the online world. And what's so interesting to me, Bill, about what you just said is if you translate that visit, which up until now is really meant a physical visit into the destination, into a digital visit, all of a sudden that digital visit has the same power or maybe more power than a physical visit does.
Yeah,
so that would be a prediction that more DMOs are sort of looking at their engagement on Facebook as being a digital quote unquote visit and a way for them to capture future visitors.
Hashtag digital visits. I love it.
Boom.
I love it. Bill, what you got?
I'll tell you what, my last prediction is maybe more of a hope, more of a dream, but I think that there's something there. And to David's point about the tide pulling out, and we see the reality, and that is that DMOs are going to get more serious than ever before about diversity. And it starts with the board, and then it moves to staff. If we're going to be community leaders, then we got to walk that walk and not just talk the talk. And so my hope and my dream and my prediction is that's going to be part and parcel of what a DMO is. Are there any agencies in our communities that are more about sharing the diversity that exists in our communities? I mean, that's what we do when we market. We show the rich tapestry. And so, okay, we talk the talk, but we've got to walk the walk.
So I love that you bring that up, and we just got a few minutes left. I want to invite everybody that is still on. Thank you again. And if you've got any final questions or whatever, now's the time. Please jump in. And while I say that, let me also just address this. A comment about diversity while you're looking at 5 white guys. We can't ignore that. Okay. And I just want to say that, Becca, Will, and I, care so much about this conversation. Unfortunately, we had several other invitations out for this panel, and it just worked out to be that way. So I just want to drop that in there. And then the second bit of that I'm glad you used the word hope there, Bill, because it is really easy for us, former X-Men. Who said that? Matt, I think you said that earlier, right? X-Men. To get up here and have an energy that is just like, I think it has the potential risk. I'll put it that way. It has the potential risk to come across in a way that is negative or that we're bashing. But I just got to tell you, our hearts and passion to serve and to lead and to steward. The reason why these sessions have been so amazing, and the reason why we give of our time, is because of the connection between when we see you attending these things and we see your faces. We have all these memories, and this is such a beloved space. And so I just want to kind of toss that in there. And guys, you feel free to jump in too, because last thing we want is to say that we're trying to bash this industry or anything like that at all.
Gosh, completely. One, I have a small gift for you on the way out.
While you wait, t-shirt design.
I love it.
I have written down here, challenge the agencies, challenge the consultants.
Yes.
These people have undue influence over the DMOs because they're the specialists, they're the experts. And I know a lot of lazy agencies will just do whatever they want to make their client immediately happy and not push them smartly and safely, but push them into these spaces where they know they can succeed because the data and the metrics say this is a possibility. So I'm with you on that, Josh. There's nothing I'm saying is directed toward DMOs specifically. It's toward the DMO space all the time. And chief and, part and parcel to that are people on the outside of it.
Yeah, I love it. Will, what you got?
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think there's any organization in any community around the country that's more prepared to really rise to the challenge and take a leadership role within the communities than the DMOs. It's built on connections, built on marketing, built on understanding consumers, and marketing is going to be key all the way around. So I don't think there's an organization in a community that's more prepared or more ideally situated to really rise to the challenge. And again, we're going to be fighting this for a couple more years, and it's not like we have, if we didn't start 6 months ago, we're too far behind. There's still a real opportunity to develop the partnerships and the networks necessary to survive and thrive in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
I love that. I just want to say, Nicole and Steven, Lucia, Jen, Carlisle, Donna, Carly, Michelle, Amanda, Mia, Cynthia, Deb, Aaron, Sarah, all of you, seriously, thank you for tuning in. I really mean that. I hope that this has been beneficial. Really, really thankful for all of you guys. Matt, David, Bill, Will, of course, thank you again. And Matt, any final thoughts or encouragement?
I'll drop a final prediction. I saw a really interesting study the other day done by a friend of mine in the space of travel health. And one of the pieces of data that came out of the research study was this idea that travelers are looking at destinations and the degree to which they have paid attention to COVID and made their whole destination safe. So yes, it's the hotels, yes, it's the attractions, yes, it's the restaurants, but it's the whole destination, right? So this idea that as a city or as a state or even as a country, the disease is being taken seriously by the residents, not just the visitor industry, but by the residents, is really, really critical as people are making decisions about where they are going to travel next. And so prediction is that DMOs will get more actively engaged in the travel health space. They will become, if not the expert, not expected to be the expert, but if they will become sort of a resource for visitors in which they can look to see whether or not that destination is safe for people to visit.
Love it. Love it. Bill, we got a couple minutes left. You got anything you want to close with?
Bill?
That there will be a recovery. We know that. And frankly, without destination marketing, that recovery doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
David.
No, I was waiting for Bono to say something behind Bill over there, but he hasn't said a word the entire thing. So, hey, thanks everyone. Thanks for this. It's a conversation that is going on. I'm with Bill there too. This will be in our rearview mirror soon enough, and we will be, marketing after this. The post-COVIDian era shall be interesting as well.
Yeah.
So don't forget tomorrow, final session, 21 takeaways to carry into 21. That's you should see that invitation in your inbox. And again, this has been recorded, so you'll be able to have opportunity to come back and share this with others, that probably wanted to be here but wasn't able. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. Will.
Hey, no, awesome, Josh. Thanks for everything. And we will be posting the 21 predictions. So we are going to be held to that.
Did we get to 21? Did we get to 21?
I think
we had to have.
I think that's what we close. And again, I just want to thank you all for your support and jumping in to help move this industry forward. And I think together we'll make sure that happens. And eTourism Summit will be here live and in person November 9th and 10th in Orlando, and then we'll be back full force next year. But I guarantee you it'll look different. We will have in-person, and we'll have a lot of other things too. So, like everything, we are going to have to adapt moving forward, and I think it's we'll be leading by example. So, thanks again to all of you for your support and for your participation.
Thank you, Will.
Tomorrow.
Thanks.
See you guys. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.